Hello everybody and welcome to another video. In this video I am going to show you how to do silky smooth blends without an airbrush, and also as a bonus how to paint a really cool power sword. So let's jump in. Hi. So I get asked all the time of how I do my blending and everything else, and I get a lot of questions about this. So I thought what would be really cool is if I did a video explaining how I blend, and in a simplistic way. This isn't wet into wet blending or anything pretty much like that. This is simply layers and glazes. So in this video I'm going to break it all down. I'm going to show you how to do it, and I'm going to do it on a really cool looking power sword, so you also get to do a power sword as well, which is going to be really cool. But before we jump in and start painting, I'd just like you to all subscribe to the channel, like this video, drop a comment and ring that bell for notifications, because we are really ramping up speed here and getting very close to getting to 2,000 subscribers, and that is amazing. So there's about 70% of my watchers who aren't subscribed, and if all of you 70% smash that subscribe button, I would be well and truly over the 2,000 mark, and it would mean a lot to me. So thank you very much for all of the support so far. A comment, even if it's "this is for the algorithm," helps me get picked up by the algorithm. All the interaction is really good. So a less promotion and a less trying to get you to hit buttons. Let's flip the camera and let's start painting. So as you can see, I have base coated this power sword. I say base coated, I primed it Chaos Black spray, and what I'm needing to do is gonna make sure that I get my nice opaque layers on there first. So the paints that I'll be using for this are Dark Reaper, Sotek Green, and Bararoth Blue, and some white from Vallejo. So as I was saying just a second ago, what I want to do is get a nice opaque base tone down. So I've thinned the Dark Reaper with a little bit of water, and I am going to be putting multiple layers on there. If you notice the brush strokes that I'm using, I'm pulling the brush to the bottom of the blade. Now for base coating this is not really needed, but it's good practice for what you're going to be doing later on in the video when it comes to the actual glazing. Now with the Sotek Green, we're going to start building up where the highlights are going to be, and as you can see, the Dark Reaper is now quite solid, quite opaque, and it's had about 3 layers. So with some thinned Sotek Green, I'm going to be sketching in where I want the brighter points. Now I don't really trying to do any sort of set pattern like you sometimes see on power swords, like having it sort of the mirror matching, where wherever I have the highlight I have a dark part on the opposite side. I'm kind of just throwing it on so it kind of looks cool and kind of pleasing on the eye, but sort of making sure that I do have a little bit of a highlight around that power node, because that kind of makes sense. Again, I will make sure that I go over this multiple times until I do have a nice opaque layer. Making sure that you've got your layers opaque means that when it comes to doing the glazing later on, a lot of the hard work is already done for you. And you can see here where I'm sort of sketching in a little line, and then I will pull the paint into the center. And when we get to the glazing part and I explain how to do a glaze, this will become more apparent of why I'm doing what I'm doing. But essentially what I'm trying to do is make sure that when I lift my brush off the model, I am leaving the vast majority of the pigment basically where I want it to be the strongest. So keep doing your layers until you're happy that you have got a solid opaque layer, and if it looks cool, then we can jump on to the next stage. Now this is going to be a massive jump with the Baroth blue over the Sotek green, and you will see that straight away. Do not worry, we will be glazing this down into a lovely, beautiful, striking, awesome transition, because that's what this video is about. Now this video is essentially aimed at beginners, but if you kind of know what you're doing, you maybe get a little bit from it, hopefully. So as you can see, I'm doing exactly what I did with the opaque, I'm doing exactly what I did with the Sotek green. I'm building up these layers and pulling the brush and the pigment into where I want the majority of the pigment to be. And I'm sort of just building up these layers. Now it is a very light color, and what you need to understand with brighter paints that have white in them, and essentially white pigment, is that these paints can be quite annoying to use. So just take your time, keep it thin, and do lots of multiple thin coats rather than a couple of thicker coats, because you'll get a better, smoother finish at the end. So again, I'm just going back in now and just building up those layers, making sure it's opaque and making sure it looks awesome. So this is just me finishing everything off. I was going to be happy with that, and you also get some of my nice grey hair. Yes, really do need to move my camera. But yeah, you just want to move it around and make sure that you do get these layers nice and solid. It is going to make your life so much easier later on. And yeah, here we go. Doing these sort of power weapons and this sort of technique is really quite relaxing. I can really sort of get just lost into the movement of the brush and the layering and the glazing, and it really is super fun. Okay, so glazing. We're going to use a piece of paper here to show you what essentially a glaze is. So I've loaded up my brush and I'm pulling the brush, and when I lift it off, you can see that little pool of paint at the end. That is basically all of the pigment that is being left, and this is essentially what you want to do when you glaze on your model. And as you can see, I'm going from one side to the other, back into the middle, and leaving the vast majority of the pigment there. This is essentially the basic of the technique and how to do a glaze. It wants to be a little bit thinner than a wash. Here I did a technique what's known as feathering, where I'm going side to side and it kind of smooths out the pigment in one area. So now that we've just gone over that, what we're going to do is we're going to start glazing the sword. So using some Sotek green, I'm going to go over these areas in this transition. So as you can see, I'm starting just on the edge where the two paints kind of have that break, and I'm just pulling the brush over that area in one direction, as you can see. Now I'm not going to edit this out, I'm not going to speed it up, I'm going to keep this whole process as it is so you can see it in real time, and I think this would be really good for you because you really will get to see exactly how it works and how it slowly starts building up. A glaze realistically should take a couple of seconds to dry because it is very thin paint, and there isn't that much paint on my brush. You can kind of sort of see it at the tip, and I'm just pulling that paint across that transitioned area, and I'm going to slowly but surely smooth that harsh divide between the Baroth blue and the Sotek green. If you do think that your brush is starting to get dry, you can go and get a little bit more paint, as you've just seen me doing there off camera, and then I'm just dipping it in, wiping off the excess on the side of my palette, and then just going back in. You can do it on the back of your hand, on a tissue. If you're a little bit controlled with putting the paint on your brush, you shouldn't really need to offload a lot of it, and you can just use the tip of your brush to get your glazes really precise. As I mentioned earlier, if you really do enjoy my content and liking what I'm doing, then please smash that subscribe button, ring the bell, and drop a comment. You know, let me know if this video is useful, and if there's any other techniques that you would like me to cover, especially aimed for you new and beginner painters. And don't forget to ring that bell so you don't miss out on any future content. This can be a long process, but it's a fun process, and just relax and enjoy it, and just take your time, because the more slower you do it, the more precise you do it, the better the result will be, and the cleaner the blend will be. So by now you can see that this transition is almost gone. The paint is seamlessly blended in now, and it's definitely getting smoother out. And you can do this as many times as you need to until you're ultimately happy with it. You can really get right down into it, maybe mixing some of the Sotek green and the Bathuralth blue in like a 50-50 mix, and then making that into a glaze, and then really going right in with some micro glazes onto the transition point to really sort of smooth it out even more. The possibilities are endless. You can also use a glaze to change the hue of the blade, and what this means is you're basically changing the colors that are on the blade. So because I've got a lot of blue and almost off whites here, what I could do is create a glaze with some yellow and green and glaze over the top of this blade, and it will change the blade from a bluish tone to a greeny yellow tone, and it would look like a sort of like a crystal blade that would be really cool for us, say Eldar. So here's the blade after I've done all of the sort of glazing on the transitions, and what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to create a glaze just to push the highlights a little bit more. So what I've done is I've mixed a 50-50 mix of Bathuralth blue and the white, and I'm just going to be glazing over the end of the sword and into the other highlighted areas just to push the highlights a little bit more. And again, it's exactly the same technique that we've been doing through this entire video. I'm creating that initial center line, and then I'm going to get the glaze and I'm going to pull that paint into the middle. But as you can see, it's really quite small brush strokes because I want to make it focused only in on that area. So to put a little bit of the color on top of that node just to make it look cool, and then just working this color around that area so it's got the brightest point. But you can really see how smooth that transition is now. Remember, a glazing is a really good technique for adding all sorts of effects. It can be good for OSL, it can be pretty good for sort of having multiple hues, You can even add a little bit of contrasting colors by maybe some like Rhinox hide or reddy browns into the deeper shadow colors, sort of to really sort of push that contrast even more. Even purple would be really good, to be fair. Here I am just coming back in with some of the Sortek just to sort of smooth out some of those transitions a little bit more, just to get it a little bit tighter after putting the highlight tone back over it. And basically the blade is almost done, just highlights left to do really. I mean, I think that's pretty decent from the fact that there's no airbrush whatsoever being used here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to do a little bit of highlighting. You've got to remember that when it comes to highlights for things like this, you can do a white highlight around the entire blade. But if you really want the blade to be like next level, try to keep your highlights relevant to the area you're highlighting. So what I mean by this is right now I'm highlighting the brightest points on the blade and I'm using a pure white edge highlight on this. When it comes to the rest of the blade, the sort of transitions and the shadowed areas, I'll be using just Sortek green. And the reason for this is it'll make the highlights brighter at the brightest points and it'll just make it look a little bit cooler and a little bit better. You can do scratches and reflective lines and all of those type of things on the blade, but what I didn't show in this is because I didn't want to overcomplicate it. I just wanted you to get the basic understanding of glazing and blending. And maybe if you want, and leave a comment below if you do, I can do a video on wet into wet blending. And this is essentially where you get two paints and you actually mix it together on the actual miniature and that area and create your transition on the miniature rather than using glazes and layering. And that, everybody, is a wrap. That is the blade done. Hope you liked it. So that's the video, peeps. I hope you enjoyed it. Hope you found it informative. If you've got any feedback or anything else that you want me to do, drop it in the comments below, and it will be really, really good if you do, because the algorithm loves that shit. So yeah, it's been really, really cool. I'm really, really chuffed with how the channel is going. Instagram is booming. It's going to be amazing. There's lots of cool content coming. I have a Crimson Fist painting tutorial coming. I am going to be doing a series of videos on a very, very cool elf by the name of Techless, and I am also going to be doing more of the making your own custom Space Marine chapter videos. The next one will be painting the Starhawks themselves. Part 3 will probably be dipping into lore and some things about going to lore and trying to stay away from the sort of silly aspects of creating your own lore, which a lot of people generally fall into. And yeah, so it's going to be really super cool. So thank you very much. So please subscribe to the channel, like and comment on this video, and ring that bell so you don't miss out on any future videos that I'll be doing. And I will see you in the next one, peeps. Goodbye for now.